be real. Are we going to deliver universal pre-K to this country or not? Are we going to expand healthcare to our seniors and include vision and dental or not? Are we going to invest in housing so that people back home in NYCHA can actually get hot water in wintertime or not? That's what we need to know, and I know we're all committed to the same goal.
NYCHA, by the way, is the New York City Housing Authority, an unknown entity to national reporters. But to sum up why Democratic moderates and liberals are having a difficult time coming to an agreement, David Leonhardt of the New York Times writes it this way, quote, "The left, unhappy about the compromises it needs to make, has decided to use tougher negotiating tactics than in the past. And the moderates, like Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia and the aforementioned Senator Sinema of Arizona, have been publicly vague about what they're willing to support in the safety net bill." Nice to see everybody getting along. Here to talk more about it tonight, Victoria DeFrancesco Soto, professor and assistant dean at the LBJ School of Public Affairs at the University of Texas in Austin, Hook'em Horns, and Bill Kristol, author, writer, thinker, and Politico. He's a veteran of the Reagan and Bush administrations, editor-at-large at The Bulwark. Professor, I'd like to begin with you. How much power truly do the liberals hold right now? And let me go a provocative step further and say that their detractors are calling people in the news media and pointing out that, in their view, the leading liberals of the House have safer seats. AOC wakes up every morning to a district that's, what, 4-1, 5-1 Democratic. They don't have the same concerns, the same skin in the game as the moderates, who have to wake up every morning wondering how they're going to sell this back home and get reelected. So I pose the question to you.
Right. The district that AOC has is very different than the one that Henry Cuellar has here on the border in Texas. It's a very moderate, leaning, almost leaning conservative district. And, you know, what's going on here is basic math. The progressive have the numbers, right? So the Progressive Caucus has been around for 30 years. They've been steadily growing. We really saw a bump after Trump's election in 2018. They've recently tightened their rules as a caucus to be more uniform. And Brian, they have ready-made villains. They have Donald Trump. They have the caucus on the other side, the Freedom Caucus. So they have such a powerful narrative. They have this narrative that they are fighting against the evil forces, and they have the numbers to do it, and they've been propelled to do so, especially with that juice of 2018. They also got it in 2020. So if you're a moderate Democrat, yes, you're wringing your hands, but at the end of the day, the numbers are what the numbers are. And this is where AOC and the caucus and the squad and all of these voices that have really been amplified have that power and are making folks listen. And that's why we are where we are right now.
Bill Kristol, listening to the professor tell the story, it seems almost understandable. I saw your tweet from tonight. What do you think about the, let me read it to our viewers. We should point out, oh man, where is it? I've just misplaced your tweet. You were reminding folks that, here it is, progressives seem excited by their supposed process victory today, but they seem to have lost track in all the excitement, that it now looks as if they're going to end up accepting a reconciliation number, there's that word again, of around $2 trillion, not their cherished $3.5 trillion. Bill, you've stumbled on a big issue there.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's hard to know how this plays out, and I think it is a messy process, obviously. Victoria's right. The party's very diverse. I mean, think of AOC's congressional district and Joe Manchin's state, West Virginia. Are there two more different places in the country? Probably. So no surprise that there are some differences. But I do think there's been a little too much hyping of the progressives' alleged toughness and victory. At the end of the day, there's going to be the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which the progressives are signaling they're going ultimately to accept. And then there's going to be a reconciliation bill, which is going to be cut closer to Joe Manchin's number than to Bernie Sanders' number, I think. And I think if it's good PR for the progressives to say they've showed, you know, how tough they are, that's fine. Josh Gottheimer, that one moderate Democrat you quoted earlier, very unhappy at Nancy Pelosi, but about what? About some artificial deadline they set up on September 27th. So a lot of this is a little silly, honestly. It is the Democrats being Democrats, and They're going to end up with a victory, I suspect, in a month. I don't know how clouded it will be by all this a very public infighting. You mentioned in the first segment, John McCormick and Tip O'Neill and the old speakers. They didn't have 24/7 coverage on cable news. They didn't have social media. A lot of these things were equally messy, but they were messy behind closed doors. But I do think at the end of the day, the Democrats are in reasonably good shape, I think, actually, to come up with a win. And the other thing I would say is, look, they should keep some focus, in my opinion, if they ever get tired of fighting each other. It's kind of important for them to win the House again in 2022, and that does mean the moderates winning. It's not the progressives who put the Democrats over the top in 2018. It's Abigail Spanberger and Elaine Luria here in Virginia and Alyssa Slotkin in Michigan. AOC seat's been Democratic for 40 years, and it's going to be Democratic for the next 40 years. So they need to pay attention to the moderates. Biden, I think, has been pretty good at giving the progressives a lot of affection and respect and a sense that they're doing a lot. But at the end of the day, I think they're going to end up with a bill that the moderates can support.
Yeah, at the end of the day, too much fighting hurts the party, certainly. Victoria and Bill have agreed to stay with us. We're going to fit a break in. Coming up, a reminder of who might be benefiting the most from all of this drama on the Democratic side. You may recognize that guy in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Amid all the divisions that have been exposed among just the Democrats this week, our friend Susan Glasser had this take in The New Yorker, and we quote, "While Democrats were fighting about liberal spending priorities and debates that at times resembled a congressional version of fantasy football, they were neither passing Biden's agenda nor bolstering the case for his presidency. The person who benefits the most from all of this, of course, wait for it, is someone who was rarely mentioned this week, but should have been, Donald Trump." Still with us, Professor DeFrancesco Soto and Bill Kristol. Bill, I did hear from a national Democrat this week who said exactly that, speaking broadly to the liberals. Did you like what you witnessed for 4 years? Do you want to have that back? Do you realize these are the stakes because it could happen?
Yeah, it'd be good if Democrats, in my mind, kept that a little more in the front of their mind. They have, look, they're entitled to debate. As Victoria said, they differ on some policy issues. They should have it out. But they should remember what the real threat is here, in my opinion. They should leave some time to pass some democracy legislation and not just fight about different big spending programs, some of which are desirable, over the next few weeks and months. The Biden administration should remind people that they're making progress on the virus. Remember the pandemic, kind of an important issue. Mandates, controversial. Republicans against them. They are working. We've now got the booster. We're going to have, I suspect, the vaccine for 5 to 11-year-olds by the end of this month. It wouldn't hurt to remind people how Trump handled the virus and how Biden's handling the virus and what Republican governors are doing and what Republican members of Congress are saying about that and other issues. So I think the Democrats, they should remember who the main enemy is or main opponent is.
And you raise issues that go right to this messaging deficit that we're seeing. To the mandate question, tonight we learned American Airlines, JetBlue, they had waited to see how it went for United Airlines, and they're going to follow through with making sure their employees are vaccinated. Professor, we continue to quote Susan Glasser. I have one for you. The Trump show, like it or not, is still running. And even if you are not watching it anymore, a big voting swath of America still is. Sadly, Professor, this is a badly needed reminder for the coastal mainstream media who get in the weeds, seldom, if ever, venture into actual America, where I note you join us from tonight, from what is still a red state.
Trump and Trumpism is here to stay. So I think in Susan's piece, yes, if absolutely nothing happens, Trump will be boosted up a little. But like Bill, something is eventually going to happen. It may not be next week, it may be in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but something is ultimately going to happen. The Democrats are going to figure it out, and that is going to be a win for Biden. How big a win is, who knows, but it is a win for Biden. But Trump is on a parallel track. He is still very popular in red America. He is growing in popularity among communities of color. We see that men of color, in particular, during the 2020 election, grew their support for Donald Trump as compared to 2016. So this is just a constant that these have to constantly keep in mind. But in terms of figuring out what is in front of the Democrats right now, in terms of the packages, the sooner it gets done and the less time they're airing their dirty laundry of inter-party fighting, the better. So I think here it's more of a question of timing. Let's wrap it up, but never losing sight of the constant of Trump.
Bill Kristol, 60 seconds remaining. It has been proffered that Mr. Carville would make a dandy short-term hire by the DNC. Anyone else out there that can help this party with what has clearly become a dusty messaging operation when they have yet to inform or remind 50 states the money that could be coming, what's in it for them?
Governing is hard, and they have a 50-50 Senate and a very narrow margin in the House. I think my only recommendation would actually be keep the president a little bit above the fray. Let Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer run this. Obviously, it's Biden's agenda ultimately, so he can't walk away from it in any way. But Joe Biden, by executive action and by his bully pulpit, has made a lot of progress on the virus. He's doing other things in other policy areas that are important, and it's a good contrast with the Republicans. So I would keep a little bit out of the congressional weeds as much as I could if I were the White House and have a clearer message, as Peter Baker said in the very first segment, on what's in this bill. Child care credit. Do you like it? Do you not? Not so much reconciliation.
It's why, for good reason, these are two friends of our broadcast to whom we wish a good weekend. Victoria DeFrancesco Soto, Bill Kristol, our thanks on a Friday night.